this meeting of the Fergus Falls Committee of the Whole, Fergus Falls City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here. Here.
We have a quorum. We do have an item for the City Council this morning that we don't see the applicant is in the audience, so we're going to, Chief of Police is kind enough to wait. If they do show up, we'll take that matter up, but we're going to move on with our agenda for the Committee of the Whole. So, first item of discussion for the Committee of the Whole this morning is the Minnesota DNR State Park Road Account Program, and we'll call on our City Engineer, Brian Uvaro. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, good morning, Your Honor, and members of this council. The DNR is accepting applications for the State Park Road Account Program. There's approximately $4 million of funds available for statewide. These funds can be used to improve local access roads for state parks, state campgrounds, public water access, and other eligible recreation items. These applications are due November 1st. Since then, we've been evaluating potential candidates for this program. We're recommending the access road for Day Lagoon Park be the city's candidate for this program. The program would consist of some full-depth bituminous patching as needed and resurfacing throughout. I have an exhibit shown on the map right here. We're estimating this project, including the loop, which would be the yellow areas highlighted, and also the, I guess I call that teal, at $290,000. The city's request from the State Park Road Account Program would be the yellow portion of the road. We're estimating that at $210,000. The local match could be potential park and rec budget or some of our annual levied funds for our mill and overlay. So at this time, I'm requesting authorization to apply for the State Park Road Account Program, and I'll open up to any questions you may have.
Thanks, Brian. So
I'll offer that, Your Honor.
Got a motion?
Second, Your Honor.
Second to bring this to the council. Anyone have any questions for Brian?
I'd call it more of a light blue than a teal, really.
Fair enough.
Okay. Glad we're on the same page.
All right, we have a motion to bring this item to the council on Monday evening. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That
Thank
motion
you.
carries. Thank you, Brian. We're going to call on Grant from Bolton and Menk next, I believe, to give us an update on the Day Lagoon Park improvements. Good morning, Grant.
Yeah, good morning, Mayor, Sheriff, council members. Here just to give a brief update on progress we've had on the Day Lagoon Park improvements project so far. We met with city staff multiple times throughout the summer just to further identify the scope of the project. We used the 2014 master plan as kind of a inspiration as to some of the improvements to the campground, and from there we use the $5.2 million budget that you guys have to further refine and define that scope. So attached, there's two figures here I'll walk through showing the campground improvements as well as some of the utility improvements that we're planning on. So this first figure, the entrance into the campground will spur off of the boat access road for Pebble Lake, and on the kind of that black area it will be asphalt, and then there's kind of three different loops per se that you'll be able to use for that'll provide RV camping and or pull behind camping. And so there's 44 camping sites, all will have electrical and water hookups. That center road, kind of from the park entrance up to, there's a white rectangle where the main restroom shower building is. Those sites will also have sanitary sewer hookups, but not all sites will have sanitary sewer. As users leave the park, there are two dump pits that will be accessed. That also, there's an inset there on the bottom right. That shows the dump pits as people leave. That'll be just off of that access road or a boat access road for Pebble Lake. On the very top end, there's kind of or the very top of your drawing, there's also a loop that will be for tent sites. There's 9 tent sites in that loop that will have vehicle access to them, and they'll have electrical and then a centralized water. And then on the far right, there's also 4 tent sites that'll be walk-in, so kind of more primitive. There'll be no utilities. Those are up kind of high up on a hill, but they'll literally just kind of be a pad for tents to set up there. as I mentioned before, that kind of white rectangle is the main restroom building. And so that's centrally located there. There'll be bathrooms as well as showers located there. Let's see. The other improvement kind of on the far upper left is a upgraded access road to both the archery range and firing range. There'll be some dedicated parking for the archery range, and then we'll upgrade the parking lot area for the shooting range as well. We'll maintain access to the state trail connection to provide some parking for that. And I think that's kind of it for this figure. Would you mind going to the next one? This next one just shows the utilities. As you can see, that we have to connect all the way down at Shoreview Drive with both water and sanitary. The sanitary is kind of hard to see, but it's the green, and then the blue is water. And so we basically route that from Shoreview up to the campground area. Along the way, we'll have a couple different services, one for a proposed future concession stand restroom building for the soccer complex, as well as connecting to the existing restroom structure for the softball fields at Pinwheel, the four different fields there. And then obviously we bring it up to the campground area, the utilities. There's some pink dots that you see sprinkled around the fields. Those are the proposed upgraded lighting for both the softball fields as well as Farmers Field and Legion Field for the baseball complexes. So that's also a part of the scope for this project as well. And that the lighting will be through the state bid list Sourcewell. And so we're working directly with Musco, which is a provider for Sourcewell, on getting quotes for that. Another piece I wanted to touch on is per Minnesota state statute, we need to do requires all non-federal public lands to do a state archaeological review. So both SHPO and OSA, SHPO is a state historic preservation office, and OSA, Office of the State Archaeologist. Because OSA has a high probability for archaeological site, we had to submit our proposed plans to them. And both OSA has responded so far, SHPO has not responded, but OSA recommended a phase 1 archaeological survey. And so we're moving forward with that. We're not at this point anticipating there being significant findings, but we have to move forward since that was their recommendation with that. Depending on the outcome of the phase 1 survey, we'll send that to them. If there's further a phase 2 survey required from OSA or SHPO, there is potential to delay the project, but we're not anticipating that to be the case. But I just wanted to be forward with that if there was any findings from that. Schedule-wise, we're moving forward with the final design kind of per these figures and drawings, with the goal to bid this project in early 2024. And then depending on bids, if they're favorable and if it's awarded to a low bidder, construction would start next summer. Albeit that as I said, the lighting will be through Sourcewell, so that's almost a separate contract that'll be through Sourcewell. Once we get a final quote back from the contractor there, we can, and that pricing is secured, we can move forward with that earlier than the campground improvements. And so that could potentially start yet in 2023 once we get that finalized. So any questions at all from you guys?
Is it my understanding that when they start work out there, we will be closing down the campground?
Correct. Yep. So it would essentially be closed for the 2024 season.
For next summer then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, Thomas?
And I think I already mentioned this to Brian, but I've been contacted by someone involved with the BMX track that they would appreciate kind of a heads up of the construction schedule and some flexibility around making sure that those users can still access. I know they have a big event every summer.
Yep.
And so I made Brian aware of that, and I think we should be able to work with them.
For sure.
Again, go ahead.
sorry, keep going.
Well, and I'll just say, I mean, it's great to see this project come to fruition. You know, we've been working on it for quite some time, and it's just another thing that's gonna, you know, bring people to Fergus Falls to, you know, to participate in recreation and spend some money while they're here and make it a stop on their camping trip. And, you know, with like the BMX track moving out there, and we've got the disc golf course and the baseball and softball, it's, you know, really gonna turn into a regional attraction. Hopefully it's gonna benefit our city. So thanks everybody for your hard work.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Go ahead, Scott.
I'm pretty pleased with this plan as well. As people look at it, they're not necessarily going to recognize the difference between the old and the new. One of the things that I thought was most significant is that the existing campground only has 14 RV sites, and this has 44. So we're bumping it up by more than double, triple. Morning math, a little tough today. 44 RV sites, I think is pretty good. As in an effort to try and get the most bang for the buck, you might say, I guess I was hoping that we might see some alternates involved in the plan too, that, you know, perhaps some additional extensions of the water into the tent camping or some other types of things that might give us some things to, you know, use all the money we can that we can and get the most out of it. Whether or not you've got any alternates planned for this or not, I guess is the gist of the question. Or was it all going to just be one package, that's it?
We have run through several iterations through kind of the scoping that there was a loop kind of up on the north side as well for additional RV. So we certainly can include some of those additional, like I say, alternates where there would be additional RV spots, or like I say, we could add water. I think that's very reasonable to have some alternates put together. And as we continue through final design, we'll identify maybe some of those alternates that we'd like to bid with the project if pricing comes in favorable and we're able to do it and the budget allows. So, yep.
Very good. Then just one last point was at the very bottom of the map that you've got, well, the other one, the connection is at Shoreview, and I believe it was just last week we talked about the pavement of that. That is by petition that neighborhood was asking for that street to be paved. And so as this work is contemplated and that work is contemplated, are we going to hopefully get this done before that street gets paved and then we got to rip into there and connect the utilities? So that's probably a question that Brian could maybe more answer.
Yeah, no, I can't recall. I believe the utilities are actually still beyond the roadway there. But yes, if we happen to pave before this project, we would do some utility extensions, you know, extend them beyond the roadway before we'd start the paving, or vice versa, so.
Sure.
Yep.
That'd be good. Thank you.
Scott.
I know, you know, this design is completely different than the last time I seen it. I missed that last meeting, but we made a lot of cuts to the campground, but we didn't do any cuts to the lighting. Is that true or not? Yeah.
Correct.
So I know this main thing when we voted on was for the campground, and the lighting was part of it, but is there anywhere we can, you know, we're going to lose our asphalt road on here now, I know, and so I'd just like to see some cuts. I don't know if we can do it, but the lighting didn't get cut, but the campground did, and that was the main drive of this thing, of this vote. So that's my question, is why, you know, we cut the campground, and then why were we so far off on the numbers? Or you guys are so far off in the numbers? You know, we would have voted for more money if we would have been more accurate on the numbers, I guess.
So first, I guess I'll say is that we actually, the initial plan we actually have the same amount of sites. We have the master plan.
I agree on that side. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about we had to make so much cuts on the campground, but we didn't do any cuts on the lighting. And then if we would have known the campground would have been a lot nicer, we would have put more money in the bond or in the vote. So why were we so far off is my question.
One of the numbers in the 2014 estimate that was underestimated was the buildings for the campground. We put a budget line item for the restroom structure, the bathhouse, at $700,000. That's probably on the high end, and we likely could probably procure something for less, but we wanted to err on the high side depending on what route the city wanted to go with the finishes and things of that nature. So that was one of the items that was, when we put together this updated estimate, it was, our scope was just to basically take the numbers from 2014 and add inflation to it. So we didn't do a robust analysis. That wasn't a part of our scope when we put together this initial estimate. And so I think that was one of the items that caused some issues with the budget, was that the buildings. were underrepresented in that 2014.
Well, we just got to, I just want to, I mean, if we're going to cut one, we got to cut the other. And I think that'd be more fair, it's fair to everybody, you know, and so I'll be questioning that as it comes in the future.
Okay.
Other questions?
I have a question of Brian, and it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with this, but when we're doing that road down there, where does the water and sewer run? Does that run right down the middle of the road like a lot of places, or is that off to one side?
Are you referring to Shoreview Drive?
Shoreview Drive, where we're gonna,
I believe it's beneath the road, the existing gravel road at Shoreview.
okay, so it's down the middle of the road.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, when we do that road, is there any way that we can put takeoffs to the empty lots that are there so we don't have to dig up that road again when somebody builds?
Yeah, I believe they're already there, but that's part of the package when we look at paving too.
Okay.
So just like the connection points and everything, if they're not present, we'll definitely extend them as part of the road project beyond the impact zone, and or vice versa. So
Yeah, it's just, it seems like every time we
yeah,
build a new road, within a year, we're digging into it for water sewer hookup, and I'd just like to
Understand.
be ahead of it.
I agree. It's something we take a look at. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Grant, for the update.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on our agenda is a franchise fee discussion. We'll call on our city administrator, Andrew Bremseth, to kick that discussion off. Good morning, Andrew.
Yeah, good morning, Your Honor. Members, let me just get situated here real quick. All right. Well, we got a handful of slides for you this morning, and certainly open and encouraging questions at the end or throughout if something pops up. But excuse me. Before I begin, I just want to thank Sandy, Bill, Gene, and all the others who helped put this together. They did a great job, as you'll see here in a couple of minutes, and it's been a lot of work that's gone into this. So we're kind of excited to be here this morning and kind of kicking off this process in front of the council. I just want to acknowledge real quick the picture on the screen. I think it sets the stage for the conversation. This is an intersection here in town that recently went from, real bad to I would say a beautiful improvement in a really nice section of town. And I guess it proves that with funding you can have these things in Fergus Falls and elsewhere. So just wanted to kind of set the stage for what's possible when we do these projects.
Andrew, could you speak up a little louder, please?
I have no problem doing that. What are franchise fees? I know a lot of you have probably had exposure to this in the past, but for the community's sake, we wanted to really get down to the basics here and make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. Franchise fees are essentially fees that the city charges for the use of their right-of-way. City-owned right-of-ways are used for roads, sidewalks, trail purposes, but also utilities are within the right-of-ways. Cable companies, internet providers have fiber, the utility companies, electric companies, gas companies all have utilities in the right-of-ways. We do have franchise agreements with the utilities, so they are able to use the right-of-way for their business purposes. That's really a contractual arrangement to talk about expectations of using those public right-of-ways. And under statute 216B.36, cities are authorized to charge a fee, franchise fee, for the use of city right-of-way. So that's what we're talking about today, is franchise fee related to utility companies, in this case, gas and electric companies utilizing the city's right-of-way. So how do franchise fees work? We have to adopt by ordinance franchise agreements with all of our utility companies and then franchise fee ordinances as well. Once those are adopted, the utility companies are required to collect those fees and remit them to the city of Fergus Falls, or the city. Oftentimes you see when franchise fees are charged to utilities, they do pass those on to the customers on their monthly utility bill. In this case, my understanding is our utility companies plan to do that. and that fee would appear on a utility customer's bill as a city fee. So if this goes forward and this is implemented, when that time comes, there'll be an additional line item on that bill related to these fees that are labeled city fee. Franchise fees can either be a percentage of the utility customer's sales, gross sales, or a flat dollar amount. We see examples of that both ways in Minnesota. What we're going to propose here towards the tail end of this is a percentage. So keep that in mind, a percentage of gross sales. And then once the utility company collects those fees, they remit those back to the city to be used for designated projects. In the case of Fergus Falls, we're proposing those projects be specific to streets, reconstructions, and repavement of streets. Just too want to note, these are billed to the customer monthly, but in some cases, the utility companies remit them to the city quarterly. I know at least one of the utility companies wants to do it monthly, and one of them wants to do it quarterly. So we're going to see a little bit of a variation as to when the money actually comes to the city, but that's really not an issue for the way we're going to look at this. All right, why would we implement franchise fees? Franchise fees are a common way for cities to fund projects without increasing property taxes. It really creates a dedicated annual revenue stream, a new dedicated annual revenue stream in our case. And nearly half of Minnesota cities are using franchise fees to fund things like street improvements, parking lots, trails, sidewalks, and other projects. So it's not an uncommon tool, and we're actually seeing more and more as the years go on and costs are rising and cities are needing to identify additional revenue streams. And then I just want to note, the city of Fergus Falls residents have some experience with franchise fees, as for many, many years there's been a franchise fee on cable. So cable subscribers have paid a franchise fee. That money has been collected to fund our local PEG access TV station. Why do we need to use franchise fees for streets? Fergus Falls maintains over 122 miles of streets. That's a staggering number, and you know, for a city of our size, that's significant. In 2023, we're spending about $3.5 million for street maintenance, which includes mill and overlays and also our reconstructions. You'll see in a few slides that what we're proposing would collect about $1.3 million in revenue on an annual basis. So it doesn't fill out the picture per se, but it's certainly a good start to the money that we need to spend on an annual basis. Our current funding for street maintenance, construction, and reconstructions come from our municipal state aid. You often hear us refer to that as MSA. That's a defined amount that comes from the state of Minnesota. Special assessments, which are never popular. Bonding, which is repaid through a tax levy, property taxes. And then general property taxes in the form of mill and overlays and seal coats and things like that. All right. The city has a comprehensive plan for future street improvements, but as we all know, costs are rising and funding hasn't kept up with those costs. We've put together a 5-year, what I would say is really aggressive plan to address some of our most problematic streets, and that will be difficult to do based on the cost that we see, but it would be much more difficult without a dedicated funding source or revenue stream like this. We've heard loud and clear for the last few years that residents and business owners want additional streets completed, that streets are their number one concern and their number one problem. And the council reiterated as much at their retreat when their top priority was maintaining our existing assets and focusing on the infrastructure rather than continuing to do new things while other things are unaddressed. Implementing this franchise fee could help us fund additional street projects, and it would allow us to do more on an annual basis and get further ahead. And as I've noted a few times, it's a predictable revenue source to help fund these projects and keep them on a more proactive and timely schedule. So it's a revenue that we know is going to be relatively stable. Energy prices aren't, going down necessarily, and it's something that consumers have to have. Why franchise fees versus a tax increase? Franchise fees spread the cost of maintenance among everyone who benefits or uses the streets. all utility owners within the city would help pay for street maintenance rather than just property owners. The franchise fee, unlike a tax, would apply to all customers within the city, including rental properties, nonprofits, tax-exempt entities, and governmental entities. So it really is everybody who uses utilities that would pay a portion of that. And then the last point here, which I think is a really valid argument, is, you know, when there is new construction, that certainly results in new utility accounts and new users. Those accounts start to contribute to this immediately rather than 1 or 2 years down the road as property taxes lag. And a lot of times, you know, you build the new road for new development, and by the time, with the lagging taxes and the development taking time to build out, you're already looking at maintenance on a road before you've even collected enough money to fund the initial cost of the road through property taxes. So this really helps get ahead of that curve as you begin collecting right away. Just wanted to kind of simplify through a graph here the process. City would impose a franchise fee on the utility companies. Franchise fees again would be collected by the utility companies and then remitted to the city. The city is proposing to use these funds dedicated to street improvement projects. I failed to mention at the beginning, the utility companies involved are Otter Tail Power, Great Plains Natural Gas, and Lake Regional Electric Cooperative. Those are the three that operate within city limits, some to a lesser extent. And I just want to say they've all been great to work with and appreciate their partnership as we've gotten to this point. We've had a lot of questions back and forth, and you know, as we're looking at data related to the amount of revenue they collect so we can do some of these calculations, they've been very forthcoming with that information and very responsive. So I appreciate their partnership in this. And I will say, for most of them, the franchise fee concept is not a new one. They're very familiar with it, and their software handles it just fine, and it would be a fairly seamless transition for them. So the recommendation before the council is coming from both city staff and the tax levy committee, who have had significant discussions about streets and funding for streets and infrastructure plans and all those things. We're recommending the implementation of a 5% franchise fee. So that would be 5% for the user based on their utility bill, both electric and gas. We're proposing a monthly cap per account of $1,000. The last time we discussed this, we heard a lot of concerns about, you know, there being no cap, and if you're a big user, the number can be outrageous. We thought it was very important, and we see some cities that utilize a cap and some that don't. It's kind of all over the board, but this is what we're proposing, is we can cap it at $1,000. Based on the timeline that we're on, the franchise fee would be effective March 1st, 2024, and I'll get into that a little more in a minute. And then we're projecting that our collections would provide about $1.3 million annually to improve city streets, and that's based on existing numbers today. Obviously, as utility rates go up, that number will continue to rise with that as well, because it's a percentage. So what does that mean for the customer? Just give a couple of examples. And again, if a house has both gas and electric, they need to combine those amounts to calculate this. If you just have electric, it's pretty easy. If you just have gas, you probably don't just have gas. So if you have a $150 utility bill between the combined utilities per month, you're looking at about a $7.50 increase, which equates to about $90 a year. If your utility bill is $500 a month, that's $25 increase, $300 a year. So you can see the numbers on the screen. Again, 5% is the math behind that. So in the proposed timeline, today, October 11th, we're before you kicking this off. What we're going to ask is on Monday night, you direct the city attorney to draft the franchise fee ordinances. October 26th, we're going to be holding an open house here at the City Hall in the council chambers from 5 o'clock to 6:30 with a formal presentation at 5:30. It's going to look very similar to this one. But city staff will be available to answer questions that people may have and provide any additional information they seek about the proposed franchise fee. November 6th, we're asking that the council, assuming this continues down this path, would offer up the first reading of that ordinance. November 20th would be the second reading of the ordinance. Those would then, the summary publication would go into the Daily Journal November 22nd. After that's published, 15 days later, the ordinance becomes effective, so December 7th. And then the utility companies have, at least two of them have some process related to the Public Utilities Commission they have to follow, which takes about 60 days. So from December to February, we want to give them time to submit their filings and follow the PUC process and do everything they need to do to get it in place. That gets us to the middle of February, so we figured it makes sense to begin the collection of the fee at the beginning of the month, so March 1st, 2024. In the meantime, Gene has a very robust communications plan. We want the community to be aware of what we're proposing. We want their questions to be answered. So we've created a page on the city website with FAQs. There's going to be a utility flyer that goes to all City of Fergus Falls customers, and we'll also do some targeted radio and newspaper ads related to what's being proposed. So we're not trying to move quickly. We're not trying to have anybody in the dark on this. We want people to know that these funds are strictly for streets, and this is a revenue source to make progress on that. So if you have any suggestions, we're also going to do the service club circuit for the most part. I think we have a lot of those scheduled. I'm going to be on the TV with Lisa Workman, I believe, and then I have a video date on Friday as well. So we're going to try to be out there. We're going to try to have people hear about this. So shout out to staff if there's any ways you can identify that we can do better and do more with that. So that concludes the PowerPoint that we have. Bill, did I miss anything you want to add?
Covered it very well.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andrew. Go ahead, Jim.
I have one question.
Sure.
Is that fee on the total bill, which includes already sales tax, are we gonna also tax sales tax, which is a tax we're already paying?
I doubt it, but we'll look at that.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Energy consumption.
Okay.
Good question.
Others? Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Thank you. Just a question here under why implement franchise fees. I just kind of checked projects. Is there any other projects besides streets that this is going to be used for?
Good question. No, Your Honor, Councilmember Krameyer, streets, and by streets we mean road surface, whether it be mill and overlay, seal coat, reconstruction, patching, what am I missing? Reclamations, and then curb and gutter as well. So anything from curb to curb on top, not utilities below.
So, and if we have some gravel streets, it could be something with that too, of course, but it would be restricted for streets.
And not street lighting either.
Correct, not street lighting, just the streets.
Surfaces.
Restricted for it.
So, and they estimate 1.3 to be collected in 2024, is that correct?
Yeah, those are based on 2022 and the first part of 2023 numbers. So it could be a little bit higher than that, depending on, I suppose there's some factors, whether how cold the winter is, how hot the summer is, and utility usage. But those are on actual numbers that were collected.
Also too, Andrew, what is, you're talking about a 5% franchise fee. What's kind of the normal? I mean, what's the max and what's kind of the minimum people are doing? Or actually, what is the max?
Yeah, I don't know that there is a max necessarily. 5% is fairly common. We see that, I believe, Bemidji and Crookston are both at 5%. Yep. And those are two of Otter Tail Power's bigger customers like Fergus Falls. Some cities are at 3%. Some cities have a set dollar amount where they're going to collect, $3 a month per customer kind of thing. And there's no real science behind what the right number is, other than we wanted to make sure that if we're going to do it, it's at least meaningful and impactful to actually be able to do more streets on an annual basis without being unaffordable.
And with that, like you mentioned, Bemidji and Crookston at 5%. Bemidji has no cap, on it, where we're proposing the $1,000 cap, and Crookston has a $2,500 a month cap. So both of those being higher than our cap.
And also, Bill, basically those caps are for companies,
Yep, for the
Yeah.
large companies.
because I don't think I use that much power.
Turn the heat up.
You probably don't.
Any other questions for Tom?
Yeah, and it's no secret that I'm a big proponent of these franchise fees, and I know I say it just about every time I open my mouth, but, you know, I really want to drive the point home to folks that, I mean, we live in the worst place on the planet where you could build roads with our, you know, seasonal fluctuations. And this is kind of a way for people to put their money where their mouth is. I mean, if repairing the streets are really as important as we hear about, then it's not free, it's expensive, we need to pay for it. The one thing that I would like to discuss a little further is a possible exemption for public educational institutions. You know, I feel like you know, our school district is already stretched thin enough and doesn't need the additional burden. You know, then I would imagine there will be other folks coming forward requesting exemptions as well, and we do have to draw the line somewhere there. But I remember during the last discussion about this, M-State was pretty concerned with the amount that they would have to pay, but obviously the cap, you know, helps to address that. So that's one part of it that I'd like to see a little more discussion around. But overall, I think it's a great idea, and if the people of Fergus Falls want to have, you know, buttery smooth streets, this is one way that we can make a little bit of progress toward that.
We should get a motion to bring this to the council for discussion on Monday night as well. Someone like to offer that?
I'll offer that.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Scott. Second. Scott, did you have a question, comment?
A couple of questions.
Question.
As we define streets, and you were talking about curb to curb and that kind of thing, would that also include parking lots? As we finish these downtown streets, for example, now they look great, and it just really points out how crummy some of these downtown parking lots are, for example, either gravel or beat-up asphalt. Would it include those surfaces as well, or no?
That would be up for the council to decide.
We didn't talk about parking lots, so. It's
So I don't
pavement.
have, if you guys want to include parking lots in the designation for these funds, you're welcome to do that.
I guess if they're not clearly either included or excluded, that's a question that we
They-
probably need to know.
They were not included in the conversations we've had with all of the things we put together for today,
Okay,
but they certainly could be. It just pulls more money away from street surfaces.
I understand that. The second question then, and it's related as far as what pulls money from what, is as the tax levy committee put together our budget proposal that we looked at a week or so ago, the increase that we're expecting is 8-point-something%. If this $1 million had been added or included in what we were planning to spend next year and we didn't have the franchise fees in place, what might that number have been? You know, would we be looking at a 10% or 12, or, I mean, is it something that's really, I wonder just what that number might be. I don't know that you would necessarily have that off the top of your head, but
Well, we could get close because we were about 1% increase was about $71,000. So if you do the math, 1.3 million divided by 71,000, you'll get a percentage.
But we didn't put 1.3 in the expenditures for 2024 because we're just starting to collect. But as I looked at, for an example, over the 5 years, if we look at this aggressive street plan for 5 years, if we did, you know, applied all our funding sources like Andrew went through, your MSA, your federal dollars, special assessments, when you come down to what's left that you need to bond for, I think over the 5 years, it would add about 17, 18% in a levy. But if we just take $1.3 million off that each year, however we apply that into the streets, that would reduce that down to about 10% total levy increase over the years. So just on, if we're looking at $30 million worth of pavement projects in 5 years, like I said, that's aggressive. Not saying that's exactly the plan because they change every year, but we're looking at that estimate. So it does make quite a dent, you know, over that 5 year period. And then of course, after that as well. So I kind of I tried to look at it in the 5 year window of, okay, what are all these projects? And we're still in the process of building out that capital plan and how all the puzzle pieces fit together, but
Okay.
But to your question, it would be over 18% this year.
it would certainly go higher, because I think in our budget, we put in one overlay project for like 750,000. If we didn't do the franchise fees and we still do that project, then we'd have to increase the levy for the bonds on that. And again, so many of the projects that we're doing in 2024, those levies will come on in 2025. Because of course we finance them next summer, first payments are made the following year. We will still be putting a bond issue together in 24 for Summit, Linden, Laurel, Stanton, projects that will be under construction, so. I'm
Well, I
probably
think-
muddying the waters more than anything.
Well, I think a related piece of the question then would be, if we were to add this to what we do, will we still maintain what we have been doing? That's the simplest way to
Yes.
put it. So that if we've been putting so much money per year into street work, then now we don't suddenly say, well, now we've got this dedicated funding, we don't need to do that anymore. We'll use that to, you know, hire new people or do some other project or, you know, something else. So that would be the fear, I guess, that it would have, is that we just, okay, all of this is going to be streets, and then it changes the rest of the budgeting so that we're not getting what we want out of this.
No, the tax levy committee was very clear of, we're still increasing the maintenance dollars in the general fund, and we know we're still going to be adding to it for the other projects we do. So that's been made clear that we're not going to decrease our existing funding. We'll probably still be increasing that as well as franchise fees to bring all these puzzle pieces together. But it was made very clear from the tax levy committee that streets are the priority and we're not going to decrease that. We want to add to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it just, when we started this process, Laura and I were talking, the biggest thing was to push that, and we were not going to reduce, as Scott, we're not reducing that number. As a matter of fact, we raised it 300,000, I think it was. Maybe not quite that much, but anyway, we just, the franchise fees is just going to hurry this along to please the people, because, and to get the streets better. And going back to the parking lots, we didn't talk about parking lots, but in my mind, get the streets done that people travel on the most, and get that, you know, we're doing a good job now, we're just going to just keep going with it. And not that we're going to exclude the residential areas, but we're going to focus more on, I want to focus more on the main streets that we're going to be doing, that the people travel on, that are bad. So.
Yeah, I think the conversation was that 26 million that Brian had presented as a need, we want to go after that. So
Right.
definitely, and this is a way to do it, right? Like, this is, obviously, it's increasing people's monthly utility bills, but like Tom said, if we're gonna take on those major costly improvements, they're gonna cost, and so this is a way to fund that. So, all right. So there's gonna be a lot of discussion, I anticipate, with constituents, with people. We're gonna get this to the public, so we'll continue this conversation. But for now, there's a motion to bring this to the council to have our city attorney draft the necessary paperwork to start this process on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Sandy and Laura and Scott, for the work on this. All right, we're going to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting, and we will reconvene a special city council meeting to consider an appeal to the denial of a THC license. So we will convene this Fergus Falls City Council meeting now at 7:45 a.m. on Wednesday, October 11th. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 I
Not
do
coming
go
back.
to work.
Yes.
Yep. We have a quorum. All right, good morning. Good morning, Chief. I'll turn it over to you to introduce this item for us. Good morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, Lincoln Vapor submitted a second application for a THC license. There were no changes from the first time that they applied for the license. The application was denied based on the criminal history, just as it was the first go around. I think what I'll do is I'll allow the gentleman to present their argument to you as the council, and then I'll come up for some closing comments, so.
Thanks, Chief.
I'd like to address the council on your issues. Sure.
Good morning. I'm
morning.
Justin Danbury. I'm co-owner of Lincoln Vapor LLC in town here. Not much has really changed since the last time we were here, other than our sales have decreased right around about 37%. And I guess what we want to do is try this again, and hopefully you guys have a change of heart and we can be allowed to compete in this market. So that's really all we have.
All right. So, we have a motion before, I'm sorry, an item before us. It would be an appeal. We need to take action on that. Chief, help me out.
Sure.
Help me out with the procedure here. That because then we have denied the license. We will need, and then we have an appeal. We need to take action on that appeal. Correct?
Correct. And I guess my stance hasn't changed since the first time. I probably a little bit even dug my heels in a little bit more on it should be denied, basically on the for the main reason that nothing has changed. I think that the individuals applying for the license, they could have taken some action to better their odds of passing a background check. You know, and again, I have to view these things from the totality of the application that's presented before me. There's 3 individuals on that application. I would say one of those individuals would pass a background check. The other 2 are in question. They could have made changes to their application to alleviate one of those individuals being on the application and found somebody else that didn't have a background that would have been problematic for the license. They could have gone to the courts, gone through an expungement process, again, to better their odds of their application being approved. So the mere fact that nothing has changed, I guess just kind of strengthens my opinion that we as a city should not change our opinion in denying the license. And I just think we're starting down a slippery slope. My decision is based on factual information. It is an objective decision. I can't base my decisions on, you know, who these people are, what they've done in their lives, that type of thing. That becomes very subjective, kind of lends itself to potentially good old boy type of system. I have to look at the facts in the application that are, you know, before me, and that's the decision that I make. So that would be my recommendation. You as a council will have to vote whether to grant the application or deny the application. So that's what question is before you today.
Thanks, Chief. And so, this is a resolution. This would be a resolution, correct? Correct. And if I'm just remembering, Ralph, we'll put that in the affirmative, correct? Correct. So, would there be a motion to, or there be a resolution to approve the license? We'll look for then we'll talk through it before we vote. But is there a resolution to approve the license that's before us? So we can consider this motion. We're going to need to take some action, so.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Jim, there's a resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, okay. So
I
the
got a
resolution is to approve the license. We'll make sure we call that before we vote. Yes, Scott?
And I will vote no on this because of the recommendations of our chief, but if you want that to move ahead, you got to try to do something different. I was hoping we'd see something different, and we didn't see nothing, so.
What,
I didn't see,
can't change my
no
background.
no changes you guys made. in
Can't
your-
change background. Background's gonna show
No,
up.
but you could, like Kyle explained, you know, you could do a couple things.
Dustin
but
is a hiree that we hired. This guy came out of prison. We gave him a chance. And
I'm-
he's proven
I'm-
to be a
I'm
good
just
employee. I'm not gonna.
Following what Kyle said, and that's exactly
Oh,
where
I
I'm
wanna
gonna
rebut
base,
that.
I'm gonna
That's
base that
silly.
on my decision on him, so.
That's silly.
But it isn't silly.
That is silly.
Okay,
Step
but
back, step back.
sure.
No,
My
you guys take a
point.
step back.
My point is that you have a business and you make decisions in your life and you want to sell a product that's controlled, a product that you need a license for, okay? And yes, I understand, and I have supported people going through rehabilitation for over 20 years. I understand that's a part of our process. But I have to make decisions based on factual information. And yes, there are things that you could have done within your application, within your business model, that would have bettered your chances for your application to be approved. And you didn't do that. And yes, there are things that you can do to change your background. You can seek an expungement through the courts. Those are all things that you can do. But the fact that you came, presented the same application, and did nothing different, why would we change our decision? That's my point.
Thanks, Chief. So we have a resolution to approve the license. So if you're, everyone clear on the motion, right? A no vote is against the appeal, correct? I just want to make sure we're clear on that because we're going to have a resolution in the affirmative. Everyone clear? All right. There's a resolution to approve the license. Roll call, please.
No.
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 That resolution fails. Thank you. And with that, Lynn, do you have any other business to come before the council? We're adjourned.
It's just like they're talking about this guy here.
Thanks.
Got out of jail.